WhatsApp message back in April. I still remember we were in the hall next door attending the wedding of respected missionary son's daughter, and he sent a WhatsApp message saying, would LA be able to host a Bibli conference in early July? And I have to admit, I had anxiety the moment I read that message. But it's not anxiety for the reason that you would think. By the grace of Allah, Los Angeles has been able to host national events time and time again. And so there was no concern about us hosting, honestly. In spite of me, the local management is able to do a reasonably good job of hosting, so that wasn't what my trepidation was. My trepidation, frankly, was that he is sending a WhatsApp message to the president of a Jamaat that has no baths, 0 in the last year. And yet he is asking me to host a Tabligh conference in Los Angeles. And so you can imagine the anxiety that that would provoke, because I'm standing here before you more to share with you some of the shortcomings that we have, and may Allah forgive our shortcomings. And everything that needs to be said has been said and will be said, inshallah, by Missionary Saab and Amir Saab. So I have no wisdom to share with you. In fact, there's a phrase, preaching to the choir, when, a man comes up to the pulpit and the only people he's preaching to are the people who already know the message. This is one level below that. This is like the choir preaching to the pastor. I can learn from all of you and from those that are on the stage. So when I was sitting here listening to Osman Choudhury Saab's remarks on self-reflection, he talked about self-reflection, and I think that really struck a nerve. So I think there's 2 things that I can really share with you today. One is about self-reflection, and one is just my perspective. That's probably the only thing I can offer you right now on stage here, is sort of my perspective as a local Southerner talking to the league secretaries about my experiences with the league. With regard to self-reflection, I think the key to everything, as was mentioned, is prayer. Nothing happens without prayer. We follow the marching orders of Khalifa al-Waqt, and every message that he has pertaining to the league comes with prayer. And that's where everything starts. And second is synergy. That word was used by Naib Amir Saab yesterday. And synergy is a very, very important thing. The only analogy that I could think of, I reflected on it as I was driving here, was the analogy of soccer, the World Cup. We've all been watching, most of us have been watching World Cup games. It's exciting, it's interesting to see sort of the world come together and to see countries go against one another. And I don't know much about soccer other than what I watch on television. I never really played it, but after watching it for 3 weeks, you get an understanding of all the positions on the field. And every player has their own role. It seems like the ball is just going back and forth, left and right, but there's actually a method to everything that happens. And I kind of came up with some sort of an analogy. It's not something that you may agree with. These are just my own thoughts, but it kind of puts into perspective what we are being asked to do, whether it's the missionary, the Sadr, the Tabligh secretary, or the active Da'in in the Jamaat. And really there are 4 components to a soccer team, or football team. There's the coach, there's the goalie, there's somebody called the midfielder, who's in the middle of the field, and then there are the forwards, the strikers, the ones who actually are the ones who are making the goals. And you can sort of extend that analogy to the local team here. I would submit that the coach, the person who sort of manages the tempo and the flow, is the local missionary, Murabi, Naib Amir, the national missionary, national Tabligh secretary. These are the people that we follow in terms of instructions, and we've all heard what those instructions are. What to do, how to do it, what our role is. As Sadr Jamaat, we look to our missionaries and the national secretaries for guidance. If we do anything on our own, it's probably going to fail. That's my experience serving Jamaat in 5 years. That if you come up with what you think is a brilliant idea, let's say it's the league, it could be the Viet, finance, anything. If you deviate from those marching orders that come from Amir Saab, it's just not going to work. It may work for a week or 2, but it just doesn't work. So One thing I would say is that if you're a league secretary, just stick to the game plan that your coach is giving you, which is the national league secretary. That's pretty much all it is. You know, and I'm guilty of this too. Sometimes I get really caught up, you know, let's do this program right over here. Yes, we'll do coffee cake and Islam, or yes, we will do, you know, the league to neighbors, but I have this really cool idea and let's just go with it. And sure, it gets a few visits, maybe there's a press release that comes from it, but at the end of the day, it probably doesn't bring those fruits that are needed. So follow the coach, the management, that's the first thing. Second is that we have strikers. We have those that are very quick to score goals, but that's not the role of the league secretary. I think that's the role of the Dain. And in my experience in Los Angeles East Jamaat is that we have a few strikers. We have people who are really, really motivated to do the league, and they'll bless them for their energy. But if you just get caught up in that energy and do nothing more, you know, the ball's not going to always be on that side of the field. And so if the ball is on the defensive side and there's a striker and he wants to kick something and there's nothing to kick, he's going to be frustrated. And so that's where the role of the league secretary in my mind comes in, and that's the midfielder. He's the person who manages the tempo. That's what the league secretary does. So if he knows who are the Dain who are active, he will tap into them when he can. But he also knows if they're over enthusiastic and super energetic, and sometimes they may present some unreasonable expectations, you have to, as a midfielder, tell them, no, we got to follow what the coach is saying, whatever that may be. And that's what the midfielder does. If you watch on a soccer pitch, you know, sometimes you think that they should be going towards the goal, but they actually kick the ball back to the goalie because they realize, you know what, maybe we need to reset. And so the league secretary really is that reset button. That's my experience. And that's where the Sadr Jamaat comes in, and that's the goalie. So the Sadr Jamaat is basically that person who's following the coach, but he's also kind of defending the turf, you know. So if something is not going right, whether it's lack of resources, whether it's, you know, deviating from the right path, that's where we come in. And right now, LA East is getting shut out, so it's on the goalie, you know. So I think knowing our roles is very, very important. One more point is that, you know, sometimes I hear that the league secretary's job is not necessarily to do the league, but to just make sure that everybody is doing the right thing. But I don't necessarily agree with that. There is a reason that the Jamaat elects the league secretaries. They're not appointed positions. The Jamaat elects them because the members see in that person something that makes them worthy of being a league secretary, which is their energy, their spirit, their love for doing the league, their track record, perhaps, what the league has done, their knowledge, whatever it may be. So I do think that the league secretary should be out there on the field doing the league, not just trying to recruit Daini, but actually do it. You know, the last thing, as I mentioned before, which is the most important thing, is prayers. Nothing happens without prayers and writing letters to Hazur. I spent the last few weeks talking to people in Baltimore, in Philadelphia, just trying to find out what they're doing, because I see those numbers, and I was at the Atfal National Ijtima last week, and I got to talk to some of them, and it's amazing some of the things that they're doing over there, and that we have a lot to learn from them locally over here. May Allah enable us to improve in whatever capacity we can, and I request all of you and our respective leadership to pray for us specifically over here in Los Angeles, that we can, you know, tap into that energy that Imam Tariq Saab has brought in the Huntington Park area. And again, may Allah forgive all of our shortcomings. I wish all of you safe travels back. And again, please reach out to me if there were any issues during your stay here. With that, then I'll yield the stage. Jazakallah.